So, we all know what Cartoon Network is, right? You see, back in the day, there weren't any networks that did cartoons and cartoons only. Sure, you had Nickelodeon, which has a lot of them, but they also had live action programming to big things up. And let's be real here, animation takes time, and because of that, it's hella expensive. Why else do you think old Hanna-Barbera shows are always clowned out being so cheap, stiff, and reusing animation cells? I'm not gonna say they're all bad. It's undeniable that they're part of cartoon history for a reason, but come on, gun to the back of your head. Name five Hanna-Barbera shows that aren't any variation of Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, The Jetsons, Space Ghost, and Josie and the Pussycats. Come on, when was the last time you've seen Yogi or Jabberjaw outside of Jellystone, huh? Exactly. All of this is to say that on television, cartoons have always been in a weird spot, especially as an art form. We all know the story. You have an amazing show of an amazing plot, amazing characters, amazing art direction, a show so absolutely goated that you think the network would be out of their mind for axing it out of nowhere, but then they don't sell enough toys and or parents are complaining hard enough that they're being a bad influence on their kids. In spite of this, however, there are a good handful of shows that manage to tell the stories and come out with at least most of their artistic integrity intact. And as far as it would be to dunk on a certain group of people and their absolutely rancid takes that almost ruined a generation of teenagers, including yours truly at that, I think that'd be a little too easy. Besides, it's not like I'd be the first one to do it anyway. So instead, in honor of Pride Month, I think it'd be a better choice to talk about what this particular show does right, disprove a few things, and maybe some of the funny stuff if you have time. Enough beating around the bush. If you've had a pulse in the past 10 years or so and also grew up wasting most of your time on the internet instead of doing anything productive, or I don't know, you read the goddamn title, you already know what I'll be talking about here. Ladies, gentlemen, and fellasmen, we are going to be talking about Steven Universe. Now, as someone who grew up with this show and spent a lot of time being into the fandom during my adolescent years, I'll be real here. My outlook on things can be a little biased, so I'll try to be as objective as I possibly can. Is what I would have said if it weren't for the fact I'm this show's biggest apologist. Alright, so let's do this one more time. So, back in 2013, 1 year before the show's official release, Cartoon Network dropped Steven Universe's pilot online, and as you can see, yeah, the art direction here is way different from the finished product. Not that that's a bad thing, but as much as good it does slay here, I really do prefer a newer design. Oh, and don't even get me started on Pearl and that yee ass haircut. I mean, come on. When the Kazuya Mishima slash Prince of All Saiyans cut looks better on you, you know you fucked up. Still, though, character design and later tangents aside, you can see that a lot of the DNA found here is present in the finished product. Steven and his rock bombs get the failure shenanigans, and sometimes the people of Peach City have to deal with that too. But at the same time, unlike what detractors of the show say about it nowadays, I'm not gonna lie, Steven's kind of an asshole here. Well, asshole's a bit of an exaggeration, but you can tell that the show's a lot more point of his writings. Like, take a look. I'm not gonna say I hate the tone of the finished show. It's one of my favorites to this day for a reason. But holy shit, dude! Imagine how funny it'd be if they kept this up throughout the entire thing.
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now.
Oh, what could have been? Anyway, well, I'd love to break this thing down line by line and reveal some secret hidden profound message. There really isn't much I can talk about here, and that's by design. I mean, come on, it's a pilot. It's about 7 minutes long, and I think that's by design. It was made to give people a taste of what was to come and get the network to sign off on it. Because of this, you only have so much time to tell the story, and I can't fault it all too much for that. I decide, again, for a story people clown off for being too mushy and sentimental, Steven is fucking ruthless here, and I love it. Again, not much of value I can add, but if you want to see the whole thing for yourself, it's still up on YouTube. But on the topic of mushy sentimentality, let's talk about the themes of the show because while I did say I try to keep things mostly positive, this show is far from perfect. Not only that, what kind of C universe video would this be if it did talk about a few misconceptions made out of bad faith? For example, we got the fact that everyone and their mother thinks that Steven is just a punching bag and no the redemption arc as we know it. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a very forgiving and selfless guy, so while flawed, I suppose the notion that him being so-forgiving kind of ruins his sacred little isn't entirely unfounded. But at the same time, I think that most people tend to forget that Steven Universe's entire deal is giving people second chances and being more accepting of others. Like, yeah, as cool as it would be to see Paradox rock Yellow Diamond shit after getting a lemon enhancers back, wouldn't that also take away from Paradox's entire arc of accepting her flaws and not having to rely on their technology? There's also this argument where Steven's way too forgiving of the diamonds, but the thing is, he's really not. Like, he doesn't want them wiped off the face of existence, but in the movie and Steven Universe future, it's made pretty clear that he's not too keen on spending too much time around them because it makes him uncomfortable. But by now, you may be asking this question, Jones, isn't it kind of weird that you're indirectly being sympathetic to a bunch of genocidal space dictators? And to that I say, I think you got most of your opinions about this show from video essays and memes dunking on it, rather than actually watching the thing yourself. Now, the biggest problem I see with many of these takes regarding Steven Universe is that many of them, and by many of them, I mean the vast majority of them, are made out of bad faith or are made by people who never got the point and never liked the show to begin with. Like, yeah, the Diamond Authority is responsible for the destruction of countless planets and ecosystems throughout the entire existence, but like, is it even confirmed that any of these planets had any intelligent life on them? From what I have gathered, humanity was the first actually intelligent life form they ever came across, and because of that, the Diamonds didn't technically view humans as alive. Which is by all means fucked up, but undeniably, if humanity was the first intelligent species they came across, all the destruction they caused wasn't technically genocide. If anything, it'd be something more along the lines of ecocide. Which is undeniably messed up, but at the same time, comparing the destruction of fictional alien critters that we never get to see the actual annihilation of, to groups of actual marginalized people who are being wiped from existence, there's a lot more about the people making those takes than it does the actual show. Just saying. The Diamonds were never supposed to be some big, menacing force of destruction that brought nothing but terror and agony everywhere they went, at least not in the traditional sense. They did a lot of reprehensible shit, but in the future, we see that they're immediately willing to try to mend things and undo the damage they caused to the best of their ability. The Diamonds weren't supposed to be viewed as space dictators. If anything, they were supposed to be viewed more as a dysfunctional family. I mean, think about it. If a White Diamond really was that much of a crazy psycho killer maniac, do you really think she would have started crying after Steve basically just told her, I know you are, but what am I? Exactly. The reason why White and the rest of the Diamonds were all that intimidating is because they weren't meant to be in the first place. Sure, they're still space dictators, and a lot more could have been done to display them as genuine threats to crystal gems, but at the end of the day, you can only make a bunch of rock Karens so intimidating. I don't fault anyone for not being fans of the Diamonds. The only real one I kind of like is Blue for reasons that should be kind of obvious, but at the end of the day, I think we still have to accept that, like, this is a kid's show. We know that, right? Really, if you want a show about rocks that fight and have emotional breakdowns while also having a more mature tone, Aseki no Kuni, aka Land of the Lustrous, is right there, even if we're probably never getting a season 2, but hey, read the manga if you hear that much about it. Speaking of never getting enough seasons, that seems to be a recurring theme about shows about gay rock people, ain't it? Another common complaint about the NSC universe was that for the last season, and especially the finale, it felt incredibly rushed. So much so that even fans of the show, including myself, have to agree. But we also have to understand, the show only had one season left to wrap things up because they were losing funding, so they were working out better time, so to speak. Not to say that the Cartoon Network was being actively homophobic, and if anything, I'm under the firm impression that my people over there do it better than Nick and Disney could ever dream of doing it, but that doesn't seem to mean that they are the company. This isn't to say that Cartoon Network's known for being actually homophobic or anything. If anything, I'm under the firm belief that the people over there do it way better than Nick and Disney could ever dream of doing it, but even so, they're still a company. As much as it sucks to say, while cartoons are an art form, when it comes to making as much money as possible, you're gonna have to make sure you have some kind of broad appeal, and let's just say, when that appeal becomes an active detriment to you in less accepting parts of the world, you lose out on a lot of potential monetary gain. The way I see things, Rebecca Sugar and the Cooniverse only had one realistic option if they meant maintaining their artistic integrity, and that was going out with a bang. As much as I would love to Universe getting an actual, more coherent, less rushed finale, that unfortunately just wasn't in the cards of the show, and for what it is worth, I respect the team for making it as good as they could, given the resources they had available to them. Then after that, we got a movie which is genuinely hailed as one of the best things to ever come out of the franchise, and a sequel to its epilogue miniseries in the form of Steven Universe Future, which was kinda ass. I'm not even gonna lie to you, but again, I said I was gonna try and keep things mostly positive here. Now, where was I? I think the root cause of people who try to look way too deep to see versus flaws is that, like I said earlier, it's not only a kid show, but also a show that's on network television. Unlike indie properties such as The Amazing Digital Circus, Middle Family, Lackadaisy, Hazbin Hotel slash Hell of a Boss for being picked up by Amazon, and Long Gone Gold Trip that actually got past the pilot phase, Steven Universe, on the other hand, had a lot of other things to worry about, like network regulations, standards and practices, international censorship, and, being marketed towards teens and early adolescents. Love for Pearl to say fuck as much as any other guy, and had the crew been given infinite money and zero restrictions holding them back, all I'm saying is, they probably would have done it at least once for the show ended. But alas, this is no perfect world. And like all forms of art, cartoons are a product of their environment. Unfortunately, a lot of people tend to forget that little piece of nuance, resulting in the many, many questionable takes regarding this show. That isn't to say that Steve Universe's flaws should be overlooked just because its critics may not be a part of the target audience. There are a wide number of genuine criticisms about this show and its writing that can be made about Steve Universe, but at the same time, I don't get why people dunk on the kids show about forgiveness and giving people second chances, ends with the protagonist forgiving the villains and giving them a second chance. That's like the equivalent of going to a Five Guys and asking them for filet mignon. The food isn't bad by any means. You may even like it more than the steak, actually, but don't go in expecting some insane depth and nuance because, again, it's a kid's show. Sometimes you just gotta dumb things down for kids to understand it, and evidently you gotta do it for some of the adults here too nowadays. Seriously, man, like a lot of the problems these people have can be solved by watching shows that aren't animated cartoons or teenagers. That and a long list of other things, but again, a different topic for a different time. So now that I'm finally done bitching, what does this show actually do right? Well, what kind of Steven Universe video would this be if we didn't talk about the gay part of the gay space rock show? We have many things such as Ruby and Sapphire's gay wedding, the existence of Gunn as a character, and whatever freaky shit Pearl's got going on, and of course, much, much more. I'm not gonna sit here and claim that Steven Universe was the first ever animated series to represent queer people to positive light, considering that, well, Japan's been doing it since the 1980s with shows like Stop You Barbecue, and although cases such as that are kinda hard to come by. But objectively speaking, especially in recent years, there's not too many shows doing it like Steven Universe besides like maybe The Owl House. Read details like Rebecca Sugar being non-binary aside, while Steven Universe initially lead more decoding his characters as queer, the reveal of Gunn being a mostly permanent fusion between Ruby and Sapphire was a big thing at the time. Sure, nowadays every new animated show has at least one lesbian bisexual couple, but back in 2015, having an unironic, positive depiction of a gay couple of any kind, alien or not, was mind-blowing. And credit where credit is due to shows like Clans, who did representation more casually, Steven Universe was also one of the first shows where Ruby and Sapphire slash Gunn's relationship and exists as a key part of the show's plotline. Granted, theories regarding Gunn's status as a fusion have existed ever since the show introduced us to the concept, but a Ruby and Sapphire being gay for each other wasn't exactly on top of the list of hypotheticals that could explain this. Hell, back in the day, a popular fan theory used to be that gems got their gems to their dead parents, and since Gunn had two gems, that meant both their parents are dead instead of just the one. Yeah, fandom culture never changed. Who'd have thought? That aside, we also have Stronger Than You, a song that ruined an entire generation of Undertale fans. It's over, isn't it? A song about Pearl still being sad she got cucked by Grid, and, of course, the entirety of Change Your Mind. Admittedly, I hadn't seen the episode in a while up until I started writing this video, but after one of my IRL fans pointed it out to me, I did a little digging and it actually turned out Steven was a trans allegory this entire time, which isn't really a surprise, but now that I think about it, it really should have been more obvious. But having outright confirmation, even in the form of an art book, was really cool to hear about, especially considering how he turned out after hyperfixating on the show for about 4, maybe 5 years straight-ish, maybe. No. Steven's arc of having to constantly live up to his mother's legacy, him not knowing where Rose begins and Steven ends, having to constantly fight to be recognized as his own person and not an extension of his mother, the Diamond still seeing him as Pink Diamond, and because of that, forcing him to wear clothing referring to him as such, and much, much more. Sure, she's an evil space dictator, so of course she had mind control powers, but considering the themes of generational trauma present in the universe, think of it like this. Having a controlling matriarch that has the ability to make people conform to whatever beliefs she wants them to follow, stripping them of all freedom and individuality, and turning them to puppets that's only serving as an extension of themselves, it's kinda obvious in hindsight what they're trying to go for. Looking back, the writing was on the wall the whole time. The only reason I didn't really pick up on it until now was because the show scuffed its release schedule, and the fact that I've been repping ever since middle school. Well, under the context of the show, it's easy to headcan Steven as trans mask, especially considering his relationship with his mother and the fact he plays ukulele. As a professional trans fan who happens to also own a ukulele, the more I look back, the more I relate to Steven's struggles, especially now that I'm more open about who I am. I don't know about you guys, but personally, I got my fair share of mommy issues, and because of it, for a time, I did everything in my power to make sure I have as little in common with my mother as possible. And as you know, since the estrogen makes you look more like your mother, you could see how that would be a problem. But that's a beautiful thing about realizing you're your own person. I'm not my mother. I'm me. I might get parts of my personality from her, maybe a lot more than I like to admit, parts of which, in all honesty, I'd spent most of my life wanting to do without because no matter how hard I tried, it'll just remind me of her and all the pain that came with it. You know how the story goes. Overbearing parent wants the best for their child, but inadvertently strips them of their essential self, resulting in them not being able to set any goals of their own, causing them to blindly follow their orders because that's all they know how to do, until inevitably it catches up to them. I'll be the first one to admit it. For the most of my life, I didn't know what the hell I was. Not because I didn't know what trans or gay people were or anything, but because the option never really presented itself. It's not that my family was openly bigoted and would have shunned me for trying to present myself in a different way at a young age, or at least that's what I like to think. But I never really got to choose much myself back then to begin with. When everything's set out for you, there's really not much room for self-discovery, and really, call projection all you want, which, come on, I'm not gonna hold you, it really is, but I see some of that in Steven. Him constantly being reminded about how great his mother was by the crystal gems, especially Pearl, the gem who had the most trouble coming to accept the fact that Steven and Rose were separate people. Him not being able to summon his shield to use his powers for most of season one, him wishing that he could have lived a normal life and met people his age rather than spending most of his time with the gems, him literally getting detonated by the diamonds, him learning that he doesn't have to be someone he isn't and learning to love himself for who he is. It captures the trans experience surprisingly well. I talked a whole lot about Toto being a great example of how even indirect coding and headcanons do a lot to help people be seen, and I stand by that, but for all of his flaws, Steven Universe, the character, had a lot more depth to him than I first thought. Like I said a while back, direct representation is usually better than allegory, but again, that's not always an option. Considering how far Steve Universe the show went to get the real thing on screen sometimes, I could see why they wouldn't want to push their luck, and I think people forget that. Shit, if you ask me, it's a miracle they managed to get Future out to begin with, but I digress. Still, another thing people like to rag on the show for is its emphasis on emotional topics, often reducing it to teaching people about being honest about their feelings, love, and loving your friends. And like, yeah, those are things it does, but that's also like saying Batman's a rich guy who uses his money to help himself fight crime. On the technical level, you're not incorrect, but it's also like you intentionally try to miss the bigger picture here. Self-love and acceptance of oneself, an undeniable part of the show, but it dives into so much more. Amethyst, one of my personal favorite characters behind Spinel and Peridot, is one of my favorite characters because the lady did my mother's taxes, insurance, or whatever. Heard Cartoon Network on the TV in the live because I was nicer, and I ended up watching with me of that one episode where Steven and Amethyst go to kindergarten. And what she would go on to say towards the end, it would stick with me.
I never asked for it to be this way. I never asked to be made.
It hit close to home. I wasn't crying or anything, but it hit, and during the car ride home and the rest of that day, I was trying to figure out why. Just like Amethyst, I used humor and indifference to ignore my problems and numb the pain because I didn't have any other means of coping, so eventually, when I started opening up to people about my problems, it came as a shock to them. To see such a goofy and seemingly somewhat flat character at that point display such emotion, especially in such a relatable manner, it meant something to me back then. Followed by the lesson that you get more than the circumstance that made you, I guess I could say that moment was one of my first actual instances of going, oh, they just like me for real for real. And as much as I love to talk about Peridot, I'm gonna admit my similarities with her are mostly surface level. So something something, she's probably some flavor nail that virtue. Cool, cool. Spinel though, let me talk about Spinel. Listen, even as the biggest apologist, I'm not gonna sit here and say she did nothing wrong, but I get the feeling. I get it completely. The idea of having someone or a group of people who you love and care deeply about that over time slowly you lose interest in you for reasons outside of your control, and by the time you realize what's happened, they're already gone. They're gone for good. There's nothing you can do about it. It didn't just hit close to home. It broke into my house and stole the TV. Listen, I'm not gonna bore you with the details of personal life of this whole video, but if Amethyst had me going, she just like me for real, I instantly transmogrified into Spinel the second the movie ended. Like, yeah, Pink Diamond didn't know better, and had she been given the chance to do things differently, she definitely would have got it wrong, but she didn't have any way of knowing that, and that's how we got here. But even so, there's something about Spinel that just feels uniquely human to me. After rejuvenation, she's under the idea that since Steven's got Pink Diamond's gem, she's his new best friend by extension because she was created to be Pink Diamond's best friend. But considering that she forged the entirety of the Crystal Gems, Steven doesn't take too kindly to this and prioritizes getting everybody else back to normal. With everyone else, Steven was able to use things they cared about to evoke fond memories of their lives pre rejuvenation, pretending them to know. But Spinel, since Steven didn't know anything about it, and given the introduction, he ignored it for most of the movie. Throughout the entire film's runtime, you get to see how Spinel was for the thousand years stuck away in the good. How happy she was to be there. How excited she felt being in the presence of the one person she thought would always care about her no matter what. The simple joy she felt for being loved and showing that love back. And in real time, you get to see the exact moment the light leaves her eyes and everything comes crumbling down in front of her. You get to see Spinel fight for even the slightest crumb of acknowledgement, not even knowing what she did wrong. But no matter how hard she tried to get Steve's attention, she failed, and that realization was enough to snap her back to reality. That feeling of being abandoned by the people you love, that feeling of longing to go back to a time or a place that doesn't even exist anymore, that feeling of trusting someone with every part of your being, that feeling of loving and caring about someone so much that you don't even realize that other person stopped feeling that way a long time ago, if they even did at all. I tried. I tried a lot seeing Spinel's backstory because much like Amethyst, she reminded me so much of myself. She was literally created to be the perfect entertainer, the perfect friend, but ironically, this meant that she could never function on her own, so when she was forced to stand still for 1,000 years, she did it without thinking, fully believing that was some kind of game because what kind of friend would actually lie about that? Drift away, the song slash montage that comes after this revelation only lasts for a couple of minutes, but I think that's why some people discount the severity of the implication behind it. Just being chronologically immortal aside. For context, about 2 weeks in solitary is enough to cause permanent psychological damage in most people, so just imagine how bad Spinella had it after literal millennia of being alone. Now take that pain and multiply it by 1,000 because the second you move, you realize that the person you thought was your best friend not only left to go gallivanting around with new best friends as a revolutionary, but also that she died, meaning that you'll never get a direct apology from her, ever. At this point, I'd probably take it out on Steven too. Maybe it's a paranoia mix of the numerous undiagnosed mental illnesses I probably have, but it's something I think crosses everybody's mind at least once. What happens when you're not as important to the people you care about as you thought? What do you do when you put so much effort into pleasing someone else and you realize by doing that you've forgotten what it truly means to be happy by yourself? Maybe I'll give the Aritoto treatment one of these days and give a video of her own, but for now, hopefully this little rant helped you get the point I'm trying to make here. It's fair. No, it's a good thing to criticize the things you like. If we ignore the flaws of the things we love, we do them a disservice by denying them the chance to change for the better. However, in the case of Steve Universe and other shows like it, I wouldn't say most, but a sizable amount of people only use criticism as a thinly veiled excuse to tear down something they don't like. Or, on the off chance, only the direct result of somebody watching the show and coming to the conclusion that will refer from the creators intended. And because of the sheer scope of the internet, people often take these supposed criticisms as fact and claim them as their own, rather than watching the show themselves and forming their own conclusions. All this is to say, See Universe as a show means a lot to me, and the 20-something minute video essay about how good it is isn't enough to do it justice in my eyes, and quite frankly, it's nothing much I can say that other people haven't already said but better. But if it helps people give the show a second chance, then what the hell? Why not? It's 5 months anyway, so I'll be doing myself this service posting this thing any other time, so thanks for coming. Thank you for staying, and thank you for watching the show. Be good people, y'all. Sub the goat meal I added to, and happy Pride Month. Peace.